Technically your first interview.
Yes.
Have you been waiting to talk?
I'm definitely excited now that I can.
The Gosselin family once seemed like the perfect American reality TV picture. 8 children, a sprawling home, and a whirlwind of busy, lively moments that millions watched and admired. But beneath those cheerful smiles and staged chaos was a story far darker than anyone ever expected. Now, years after the cameras stopped rolling, Hannah Gosselin, one of Jon and Kate's daughters, is breaking decades of silence. She's stepping forward with a story that flips everything we thought we knew on its head. This isn't just another tabloid headline, it's raw, unfiltered truth. What she shares will force you to reconsider the narrative around one of television's most famous families, and why the silence had to end. The public always saw a family drama, a custody battle splashed across gossip columns, with Kate forcing her children to choose sides. And in that battle, she reportedly chose wrong. When a teenage daughter left her mother's house to live with her father, it was easy to dismiss as rebellion or manipulation, the classic reality TV storyline. But Hannah's story reveals a deeper reality, one that challenges those assumptions and shakes the foundation of what we believed about the Gosselins. What you never saw was the subtle, suffocating control behind the scenes. She didn't abandon her family. She escaped from a version of it that was quietly breaking her spirit. Rather than running away, she was running toward the only parent who offered peace, away from the constant storm. Behind the camera's lens, the chaotic household wasn't as it appeared. It wasn't a free-for-all, but a tightly controlled environment where even the smallest choices, like when to use the bathroom, were regulated. The day was segmented, not by life's natural rhythm, but by production needs. Every lunch was scripted, car rides were planned like scenes from a play, and even casual chores were orchestrated for the camera. Emotions weren't genuine responses. They were performances, sometimes repeated until the right tear fell or the perfect cry was captured. This wasn't direction. It was an order. If you couldn't produce the right reaction, the consequences were immediate and harsh. Off-camera, Kate's warmth was replaced by anger and strict discipline. When a child hesitated or faltered during filming, the cameras would stop and voices would rise sharply. This wasn't about parental correction, but about training for the next take. According to Hannah, this was the norm, not the exception. And while the production crew was aware, instead of intervening, they softened the footage, cutting out the rough moments and preserving a polished image of discipline and structure. What looked like routine parenting to viewers was, in truth, fear and control under a spotlight. The family's brand was meticulously guarded, and anything that didn't fit the perfect mold was quickly hidden away. Hannah recalls moments when a sibling simply missed a cue or flinched during a scene. The reaction wasn't anger or frustration in the moment. It was a calculated effort to break the child down and then bring them back for a usable take. This behind-the-scenes reality was far from the happy family image portrayed on television. It meant losing privacy, spontaneity, and sometimes safety, all sacrificed for a few more minutes of picture-perfect footage. The public saw a family. The children lived a performance, rehearsing smiles and tears alike, while their true selves were edited out of the story. A particularly unsettling part of Hannah's story involves the journals Kate kept on each child. These weren't simple notes about milestones or cute moments, but detailed logs of every misstep, every sign of defiance, and every mood swing. These records weren't for reflection. They were tools of control, carefully used to justify punishments and enforce discipline. When Hannah discovered she was labeled rebellious in her mother's notes, It was a turning point. At the time, she didn't fully grasp what it meant, but it became clear that any show of independence was a threat that needed to be stamped out. These journals eventually made their way into court documents during the family's legal battles, transforming Hannah from a daughter into a case study of defiance. Every act of resistance was scrutinized, catalogued, and used to build a picture of a child who needed to be corrected. The relentless documentation created a system where there was no room for normal childhood mistakes or freedoms, only a blueprint for a perfect, controlled image. For Hannah, understanding the weight of those words in the journals was more than a revelation. It was a lifelong battle to reclaim her identity against a system designed to suppress it. When Hannah left Kate's custody, the media wasted no time shaping a story that fit the popular narrative of a troubled, rebellious teen. But Hannah insists this was a fabricated image, a public relations move meant to discredit her. There was no official diagnosis, no professional intervention, no therapeutic support, just an exile disguised as punishment. When she moved in with her father, the tabloids quickly labeled her out of control. But the truth was far more complex. The supposed troubled teen was simply a young girl seeking refuge from an environment that had been tightly controlled and suffocating for years. Hannah's courage to speak out now sheds new light on a story the public thought they understood. It challenges us to reconsider what we accept as truth when it comes to celebrity families and reality TV. What seemed like everyday family drama was in fact a tightly woven story of control, silence, and survival. Behind the smiles and staged moments, a young girl was fighting to be heard, to be seen for who she really was. And now, finally, she is. The truth Hannah shares doesn't just rewrite the past, it demands we rethink how we view fame, family, and the hidden costs of the entertainment industry. The story of Hannah Gosselin's departure from her mother's home was twisted and spun in the tabloids as an act of teenage defiance, a reckless rebellion, a dramatic break from family. But what if all those headlines missed the real story entirely? Hannah insists she wasn't some wild child, and certainly not the troublemaker the media portrayed. There were no professional diagnoses, no official reports, just assumptions made to explain away a desperate choice to escape an unbearable situation. The press leaned heavily on rumors and anonymous tips, painting her as the difficult one, the problematic teen. But Hannah's truth tells a different tale, one of a young girl searching for peace in the midst of chaos. This portrayal didn't just distort her story, it isolated her completely. The public's harsh judgment left her alone to handle the emotional fallout without a single ally to lean on. Instead of support, she found only silence and cold shoulders from her own siblings, who seemed locked in an invisible pact of loyalty to protect the family's image. It wasn't bitterness that kept them quiet, Hannah believes. It was fear. Fear bred from pressure, threats, and carefully crafted narratives that kept everyone in line and kept her out. When Hannah moved in with her father, the world's story shifted again. From a girl seeking refuge to a rebellious troublemaker. The tabloids embraced the new narrative eagerly, but there was no truth behind it. No official therapy sessions, no interventions, just an exile disguised as discipline. That story was crafted to explain her escape, rather than the reality of her survival. Her siblings, those who remained behind, were like ghosts in her life. Attempts to connect were met with long silences, cold responses, or outright refusals. Weeks would pass without a single word. When contact finally came, it was often a brief message asking her to stop reaching out, not out of anger, but due to pressure that was far deeper than personal hurt. Hannah is convinced this silence isn't accidental or natural. It's constructed. maintained by unspoken rules, legal agreements, and emotional chains that bind them tightly. The family's private affairs weren't just hidden. They were locked down by non-disclosure agreements and verbal warnings, making sure nobody spoke up, not even former staff or close friends. The fear extended far beyond the home, showing up in public moments that were hard to watch and harder to forget. Like that Today Show interview with Kate and her young twins, meant to be a light-hearted glimpse into family life, but quickly turning into a showcase of control. When the girls hesitated to speak, Kate's sharp words cut through the moment. "Spit it out!" she demanded. And the uncomfortable silence that followed was palpable. Even the host admitted it was an uneasy scene. For Hannah, this wasn't just awkward television. It was a glimpse behind the curtain into the constant pressure to keep a happy face, to never reveal the cracks beneath the surface. That pressure was everywhere, on camera and off, a relentless demand to conform to an image that bore little resemblance to reality. It wasn't loyalty that kept her siblings silent, Hannah believes. It was the weight of fear of consequences, legal actions, and emotional manipulation. They had learned early on that speaking out wasn't safe. It was easier to stay quiet, to pretend, to protect themselves by disappearing into silence. The family dynamic was weaponized, she explains, a constant surveillance where every move was watched, recorded, and judged. Kate's meticulous journals weren't just court exhibits. They were a way to keep the children under control long after the cameras stopped rolling. Even now, years after leaving that household, the shadow of those notes lingers. A reminder to the siblings that any misstep could be used against them. Hannah understands why her siblings won't respond, but that understanding doesn't lessen the ache of their silence. They shared a childhood, but their paths diverged sharply when the doors closed. Some are trapped by legal restrictions, others by fear, but all are held back by the overwhelming presence of a narrative controlled by a parent who wields media access and legal power like a shield. Speaking out in that environment feels like stepping into danger. Hannah doesn't judge her siblings. She worries about them deeply. She hopes that one day the fear will break, that they'll realize they are not alone, and that someone else lived through the same house and made it out. Until then, their silence speaks volumes. It's not just distance. It's a form of control that still echoes loudly. In the quiet moments away from the cameras, Hannah has shared more intimate conversations with her father, Jon Gosselin. Those talks are raw and unvarnished, far from the scripted sound bites the public expects. Jon has admitted, without hesitation, that he made mistakes. Mistakes he regrets deeply. He told her he wished he had acted sooner, that he should have shielded his children before the situation escalated. His time in the spotlight, he said, stretched too long, consumed by a relentless battle of custody and media frenzy that swallowed the family whole. Fear held him back then. Not just fear of Kate, but fear of the courts, public opinion, and losing what little connection he had with his children. He didn't fight as fiercely as he should have, and that truth weighs on him every day. Hannah doesn't cast him as a hero or villain. He wasn't perfect, but he never lied about who he was or the things that went wrong. While the world turned their family into spectacle, Jon chose to embrace honesty over image, shifting his focus to rebuilding trust with the kids he could still reach. When Hannah asked why he never took Kate back to court for custody of all 8 children, his answer was simple but weary. He didn't think he had the strength or resources, and pushing harder might have made life worse for the siblings still under Kate's care. She didn't like hearing it, but she respected the honesty. Their relationship now isn't about perfection. It's built on those honest exchanges and a shared understanding of past regrets. Jon admits he should have recognized the warning signs sooner, should have stepped in earlier. But he also believes that showing up and speaking the truth was the first step toward healing. The contrast between the silence she encountered from others and the openness from her father is stark. He wasn't flawless, but he never deceived her. And that honesty became a shield in itself, a form of protection in a world that often felt unsafe. Hannah remembers the cameras capturing moments when she and her siblings broke down, when emotions spilled over in ways no child should have to endure. She recalls how the boom microphones stayed live, the cameras rolling, while the adults on set, including producers, did nothing to intervene. They stood by silently, watching as the children struggled, sometimes enduring punishments or harsh words just steps away from the lens. Those moments, raw and painful, were never edited out for the audience. The camera never cut away. The producers, responsible for safeguarding those children, instead turned a blind eye. The show captured every breakdown, every moment of vulnerability, making entertainment out of real pain. Behind the scenes, the reality was far from the perfect family the viewers adored. This wasn't just television. It was a performance where the cost was measured in childhoods lost and voices silenced. Hannah's story is a testament to resilience, a reminder that the truth behind the glitz and glamour often hides shadows too complex for tabloids to handle. As her voice rises above the silence, it challenges us all to look beyond the headlines and ask what lies beneath the surface of the images we consume so eagerly. She remembers the chilling detachment of it all. The way camera crews would reset their equipment just minutes after a child was punished or humiliated in front of everyone. One moment, tears and raw emotion filled a bedroom. The next, they were seated around a kitchen table. Leaving Kate's home meant more than changing addresses. It meant leaving behind everything she'd ever known. Her siblings Leah, Joel, Alexis, Aiden, me, and Kara. By 2021, Hannah and her brother Colin were living full-time with Jon. Though a judge made it official, the emotional wounds remained raw. Jon hasn't spoken to the other siblings in years. His door is open, but no one has walked through it. Hannah carries that silence too. The peace she gained came with a heavy price. She doesn't blame her siblings. She isn't trying to be a hero, but she wants the truth to be heard. She didn't break the family. She simply stopped pretending it wasn't already fractured. Years of silence exacted a steep toll. Panic attacks, restless nights, and a deep mistrust of those around her became daily battles. The weight of holding back her story crushed her. But the hardest part was keeping quiet to protect others, to shield the carefully maintained image. Now, there's no legal team crafting her narrative, no publicist smoothing over her words. It's just Hannah, a camera, and the unvarnished truth of someone silenced for far too long. She's done protecting those who saw her as part of their story, not as her own person. There were years when she thought silence would safeguard her family, hoping it would prevent more pain. But silence allowed a different story to take hold, one that erased her reality and replaced it with the myth of a troubled child. They never wanted to hear her truth. They only wanted her to play the part. Now, she refuses to play along. The truth was, no one cared about the trauma that unfolded when the cameras weren't rolling. Every breakdown, every unfair punishment was filmed and captured, yet when the recording stopped, the adults turned away. They treated real suffering as inconvenient, as if the story was only valid when it could be edited to fit a script. Now, it's no longer their call when the truth is told. She's taking control, speaking openly, no longer protecting those who caused harm. "If this ruins me, so be it," she says, "but you need to know what happened." This isn't about destroying anyone. It's about exposing the truth hidden behind the scenes, about voicing what so many feared to admit. The cost of silence was not just emotional, but physical and mental. It's a burden she carries every day. Though silence once seemed the easier choice, she now knows it was only she who paid the price. The era of hiding is over. She's ready to reveal what the cameras concealed. No longer will anyone rewrite her story. When you watch the public life of these celebrities, it's easy to forget the complex layers beneath the surface, the real struggles behind their glamorous image. Take Jon Gosselin, for example. His life is marked by very public battles. Yet privately, he carries regrets and lessons learned the hard way. Despite his flaws, he chose honesty over facade in the end, something rare in a world obsessed with image. That truth became his unexpected shield. Looking at his lifestyle today, Jon maintains a modest but comfortable existence. Over the years, he's owned several luxury cars, including a sleek Mercedes and a sturdy Range Rover, vehicles reflecting a balance between style and practicality. His collection of high-end watches, though never ostentatious, includes classic brands like Rolex, symbolizing a respect for timeless quality rather than flashy trends. Jon's real estate investments show a thoughtful approach, owning properties that offer both comfort and potential value growth, rather than extravagant showpieces. Though he no longer flies on private jets, he has access to charter services for essential travel, reflecting a shift from celebrity excess to practical needs. His business ventures have been cautious but steady, with ownership stakes in local media projects and occasional partnerships in lifestyle brands. Financially, he's known for taking calculated risks, sometimes struggling but always learning. Throughout his career, Jon carried insurance policies that protected his health and assets, a necessity in a world where fame can quickly vanish. His approach to wealth is pragmatic. He's learned that building and preserving assets requires more than flashy spending. It demands discipline, foresight, and a willingness to adapt. The lessons from his journey are clear. Public image often masks private hardship, and true strength lies in honesty and resilience. His story is a reminder that behind every headline, there's a human facing battles unseen. From the heights of fame to quiet reflections on mistakes and growth, Jon Gosselin's life is a testament to the complexities of navigating celebrity and finding peace beyond the spotlight. So, as we reflect on these dramatic lives, remember that beneath every glamorous facade, there's a story waiting to be told. One of survival, struggle, and ultimately, truth. What do you make of this family saga? Share your thoughts below